Hey, I hope you stay with us for the video today. I'm going to be talking to a good friend about a very creative approach to using reverse proxy to solving business complexity issues in your network. So stick around, I think you'll learn something. Hi, I'm Amoroso. Welcome to our video today. I want to welcome a good friend of mine, Michael Oldham, who is the CEO of a very cool cybersecurity company called PortSys that I'm going to let him describe what they do. It's very cool. It kind of provides zero trust for your network, protects apps, and something I've been looking at for a while. So, Michael, nice to see you. Welcome.
Hi, Ed. Nice to be here. Thanks very much.
Hey, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you guys do at PortSys?
Sure. Well, effectively, our product is total access control, and the idea is to provide a solution to help organizations to manage control over access to all of their resources wherever they happen to be, whether the local, cloud, whatever type of resource you might have. That could be legacy applications, client server applications, SSH devices, IoT, etc. Bring that together, and we do that by using a reverse proxy. It's an updated reverse proxy. Everybody's familiar with the concept, and what you're trying to do is create a gap between the people who are trying to get access and create that air gap essentially to the resources. So there's no direct connection to resources. And it gives you the capability, and we use our product to help organizations to do that and to move to a zero trust infrastructure. And be able to create a much more simplified version of control over access to their resources throughout their organization.
So your customers are businesses and enterprise, teams that would have a network and would have apps and things like that. Probably a little slightly bigger businesses, is that right?
I mean, medium to larger enterprises really tend to be the places that we're most interested in our technologies. And you know, it really does run the gamut, because really anybody who's concerned about security and trying to manage control over access to their resources is a potential customer of ours.
It seems like one of the themes that you guys are very good at dealing with is complexity, right? This idea that your network is just starting to connect up. Everything, it's the sprawl from the simple perimeter networks we used to have to really complex networks. Is that something that you guys think is addressed in your solution? Is that part of the idea, like kind of controlling the complexity?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest problems that we have in security today is complexity. We have too many different products from too many different vendors in our infrastructures. On top of all the servers and applications and resources we have to have and manage, it's gotten crazy for most people to be able to manage all of that. And that's one of the biggest challenges. So what we've done is try to create a way to bring all that together into a simplified solution that's easier both for the end users as well as for the administrators, to bring all that together and give you a simpler view, but much more strong from a security perspective. A stronger position, I think, because you can validate users better, you can validate the kind of traffic that's going through an application, et cetera, and do that much more robustly.
And this view is an attack surface, right? Is that ultimately, that seems to be the term that people are using for this view of the infrastructure and the things they need to protect. Do I have that right?
Well, the attack surface really looks at any place that people can attack your organization. Most of the times when you start thinking about that, it's ports, right? If you're talking about on a technical basis, you've got application resources, et cetera, that have to open ports. You look at things like VPNs or RDP or mobile device management or other kinds of solutions. And those ports are open to the outside world so that people can get access to the information that they need to do their jobs. But those same things are available to the hackers, and that's a big problem. So what you want to do is try to reduce that attack surface, bring that down. And it applies on the inside of the infrastructure just like it does to the outside. You want to reduce that risk, bring those things down. That's kind of the principles behind Zero Trust, is you're trying to bring down the attack surface and the potential risk for the organization. And that's really what we focus on.
Yeah, makes sense. Now take me through a deployment. What are some of the steps? My observation, you and I have been chatting a little bit about your product for some time. It seems like a very easy sort of process for people to deploy. How would the whole thing work? What would it be like?
Sure. Well, typically what happens is a customer will look to bring our solution in, whether that's a trial or whether that's just bringing it in for production. And typically you drop this in the infrastructure that you already have in place. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to do a new identity infrastructure. You don't have to rewrite your applications. You don't have to change your network. You put this in, and basically what happens is you start to direct people to total access control. And total access control will then control access to the applications that you want. But because we do this in parallel to everything that's in your existing environment, we are doing this in a way that you can migrate at the pace of change your organization can manage without having to go and do a rip and replace or anything else. Total access control was designed to work well with other technologies that you already have in place and to be either a security overlay, or in many cases it could replace some of those, or at least change the user distribution of technologies. Things like VPNs or other things. You may not need to open the entire network to people who are coming in through a VPN. You may have lots of people who could just get access direct to the applications. And so we make it very simple and easy to make that migration across. We actually see that end users will, and many of our customers have told us that the end users start to say, hey, can we do more of this? Because it makes our lives easier rather than making it more challenging. And I think that's a challenge that we've had in security for a long time.
That's great. That's that ease of sort of protection for apps, that would extend not just for cloud, but like legacy stuff. Like if
Sure.
I'm running legacy apps, how would that work with an old sort of legacy application sitting in a data
Sure.
center? You could provide the access there too, right?
Absolutely. And when you think about it, reverse proxy is an older technology that's been around for a long time, but it had valid reasons that it was used, and it's still just as valid today. A lot of the older technologies that were doing reverse proxy didn't keep up with the times, but when you start looking at a reverse proxy, it sits in between your user and the resource, whatever that resource happens to be. And in this case, with legacy applications, we can do a number of different things. First, you can get access to those legacy applications. Old mainframe systems or COBOL systems or whatever it happens to be that they were written a long time ago. But you can also do things like validate the end user, add multi-factor authentication to those legacy applications, because the reverse proxy provides the conduit for access, and until you get past that reverse proxy, our total access control solution, you can't get access to that legacy application. And so it gives you the ability to be able to free up the organization from having to figure out how to develop multi-factor authentication, other challenges around your existing infrastructure, and being able to make this much easier to be able to handle those kinds of solutions. In fact, some of our customers have looked at this and said, this is our key to be able to migrate from our existing data center and put it in the cloud, because now that we've solved the access problem and the multi-factor and all the things that they have to do from a administrative perspective, they can now think about where they could potentially change or shift. But many times they don't, because they don't need to.
Do most of your customers, maybe all of them, have some hybrid arrangement right now of cloud? And is that the current mix?
I don't really know many customers who've gone 100% cloud.
Yeah.
Tends to be smaller organizations who could do that. Most organizations have a mix. And one of the biggest challenges to that mix are things like legacy applications, et cetera. When you're looking at trying to unify security across the board, you've got cloud applications, you've got local applications. How do you manage that? And our solution is designed to be able to manage across the board, whether they're local applications, cloud-based, whether it's public cloud, private cloud, whatever. And it's really designed to be able to give you a single view over all of that information and be able to then run reports that says who got access to what throughout the entire organization.
You wonder how people get through compliance without these unified reports, Must be just a nightmare, like pulling from all sorts of different systems, right?
And every system is different in the way it reports. Every system is different in the kind of reports. So you have to have yet another system to accumulate all of the information from the separate systems to try to pull that together. And rarely do you get one that's going to be able to pull everything together in your organization. This gives you a chance to be able to look at it in a different light.
Systems to deal with systems and compliance for compliance, and it gets pretty...
No wonder why it gets too complicated these days.
You mentioned earlier that the end user experience is kind of good. Tell me a little more about that, because in the world that we live in, security, usually when you make things more secure, users are like, oh boy,
right.
not convenient.
More work for us.
Yeah, right. What's been your experience with your customers and the end user?
Yeah, well, basically the experience tends to be, we bring things together into a single portal, single sign-on to the resources. We are able to use multiple factors of authentication, not just multi-factor, which is something that we have and support, but multiple factors. So you could look at, a SMS token or push notification on top of certificates on an end device, et cetera. But most of that is behind the scenes. The user has a similar experience to what they have today, whatever that is. If it's passwordless, maybe, if you want to go passwordless, or username and password. But username, password plus a multi-factor authentication. And everything that they need and get access to is in one place, whether it's local, cloud, et cetera. And it doesn't matter if they're coming in from home, from the road, from their managed corporate device sitting in the sitting in their network in the office. All of those are possible, and they're the same experience. What ends up happening is that the security side of it is variable based on the context of access, users' credentials, et cetera. But that's behind the scenes to the end user. The end user puts in their credentials, and they get a portal, or in the case of third-party resources, they might get just that one resource only. They may see something like, let's say it's an air conditioning system. It's the only thing that they would see. But it's a very simple process. They click on the resources that they want to go to, and it just goes there. Single sign-on direct. And so end users start to actually pull the organization faster because they, when you start out, most organizations, as I mentioned, start out with a couple of resources. And then over time, they keep moving things across at the pace of change that the organization can manage. But what happens is that the users start seeing an easier process and something that makes their lives easier. They start to grab onto it and say, let's move in this direction.
Is that how you do a POC? Like if somebody wanted to do a proof of concept, proof of value, would they start with a couple of assets, as you point out? How is that going? Like I would imagine from a sales perspective, that would seem like a pretty easy way for people to get some feel for the product without completely committing, changing their infrastructure. Is that what a POC would look like?
Absolutely. Usually what a customer will do is select a few different resources or whether it's cloud or local, tougher applications that they can't solve with other problems, et cetera. That's where they usually start. And then over time, the POC, we usually try to keep the POC to a defined time length, a relatively short period of time, so that you can do it, test it, have the resources applied to it to make it happen. And then from there, organizations will then move into production and slowly move things across as their organization can manage the pace of change. But it's a very simple process because we're not disrupting the existing infrastructure and saying you have to change everything. Some of our customers will even put it in test systems. If they have a whole test environment, they'll put it in there instead of in parallel with their existing production environment. But both of them work just fine.
That's awesome. Hey, you enjoying running the company?
Oh yeah, I love it. It's fantastic.
You guys are, where are all the different locations? Where's everybody located on the team?
We're actually located around the world in different locations. We've got offices headquarters is in Boston, Massachusetts in the US, and then we also have an office in London. And then we have people in various places around the world, development, marketing, et cetera, in places like the Ukraine or Sri Lanka or other parts of the world.
It is a very modern startup configuration, right?
Absolutely.
That's
and
awesome.
we take advantage of that because it's out there. We've been doing that for a number of years, and it works very well for us.
If people want to be in touch with you, is the website the best place?
Yeah, PortSys.com, PortSys.com, and that's the best way. And there are plenty of places to get in touch with us, lots of materials if you want to look and understand a little bit more about what we do. But my encouragement is to pick up the phone and give us a call or send us an email.
That would be
great.
We hope people do. Probably more email than pick up, make a call.
Yeah, email's great.
Who knows?
It works really well.
I'm an old AT&T guy. I used to like making phone calls. I don't do it much anymore. But thanks so much for coming and visiting. I really enjoy
Thanks very much, Ed.
Chatting with you, and keep up the good work.
And we'll do our best.
That's great. And for everyone else watching, we'll see you next time.